October 5th, 1969. Barbra Streisand broke down minutes before going live on the Ed Sullivan Show, locked in her dressing room, mascara streaming down her face. Unable to stand, with 4 minutes until 70 million Americans tuned in, Ed Sullivan made a choice that defied every rule of live television. He didn't send her agent. He didn't rearrange the show. He didn't treat her like a contract that needed to be fulfilled. He walked into that dressing room himself and closed the door behind him. What he said in those final 90 seconds before broadcast wasn't about saving the show. It was about what happens when you have to choose between protecting your career and protecting your heart. And the whole world is watching. October 5th, 1969. Studio 50 on Broadway hums with the precise mechanical rhythm of an empire, running at peak efficiency. The Art Deco Theater, with its sweeping balconies and gilded details, has become America's Sunday night cathedral, a place where 70 million people gather without leaving their living rooms, united by a single man's unwavering vision of what entertainment should be. Ed Sullivan moves through his pre-show ritual with the certainty of someone who has done this 833 times before. At 68 years old, he carries himself with the same stiff formality that made him seem ancient even in 1948 when the show began. His dark suit is perfectly pressed. His posture is military straight. His expression reveals nothing, because in 17 years of introducing presidents, managing drunken celebrities, and surviving the chaos of the Beatles, Ed Sullivan has learned that control is everything. The audience begins filing in at 7:15 sharp, dressed in their Sunday best. They take their seats with the reverent anticipation of people who know they're about to witness history being made, even if they don't yet know which moment will become legendary. Everything proceeds exactly as it should. Tonight's lineup represents the full spectrum of Sullivan's cultural authority. Richard Burton will read from Hamlet. The comedy duo Stiller and Miara will deliver 8 minutes of perfectly timed domestic humor. Ballet dancers from the Royal Academy will bring European elegance to American living rooms. It's the kind of variety that defines Sullivan's genius. High culture and popular entertainment, woven together so seamlessly that factory workers and college professors could watch the same show and both feel it was made for them. But the centerpiece, the booking that required 6 months of negotiations, the performer whose name sits largest in the newspaper advertisements, is Barbra Streisand. She is returning to the Sullivan stage transformed. 6 years ago, in 1963, she was a terrified 21-year-old nightclub singer, performing while visibly trembling under the studio lights. Now, at 27, she commands $50,000 per appearance. She has won an Oscar, a Grammy, 2 Emmys, and stands as living proof that talent can shatter every conventional expectation about beauty, background, and belonging. Backstage, stage manager John Moffat checks his clipboard at 7:45. Everything is proceeding exactly according to the minute-by-minute schedule that governs live television like sacred law. Barbra's dressing room has been prepared to her exact specifications. Her musical director, Peter Matz, finished sound check at 6:30. Her arrangement of Look at That Face runs exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds, timed to the split second for the commercial break that will follow. Ed makes his customary backstage rounds, greeting each performer with the same professional courtesy that has made him legendary for treating janitors and movie stars with identical respect. Everything is in perfect order. At 7:52, with 8 minutes until the live broadcast begins, Ed heads toward the wings to take his position for the opening. The familiar pre-show energy fills the studio. Camera operators checking angles, the lighting director making final adjustments, the orchestra tuning in the pit below the stage. It is just another flawlessly organized Sunday evening in the kingdom Ed Sullivan has built through 18 years of unshakable control. Then a stagehand appears, moving quickly through the backstage shadows, and whispers something into Ed's ear that makes him stop completely. The message is simple and devastating. Barbra Streisand is locked in her dressing room and cannot stop crying. Ed's first instinct is pure professional calculation. 6 minutes until live broadcast. 70 million viewers waiting in living rooms across America. A show that runs like clockwork because it must. Because reliability is the only currency that matters in live television. His stage manager can rearrange the opening, move Richard Burton up to buy time, shuffle the acts while they handle whatever theatrical temperament has erupted backstage. But the stagehand's face carries something beyond standard pre-show anxiety. His voice drops lower. "Mr. Sullivan, it's not nerves. She got a phone call 20 minutes ago. She won't open the door. She won't talk to anyone." Ed Sullivan, who has managed drunken celebrities at 2 in the morning, last-minute cancellations that threaten to destroy entire broadcasts, and the overwhelming chaos of the Beatles' first American appearance, makes a decision that defies every instinct he has honed across 833 shows. He doesn't send an assistant. He doesn't call her agent or her manager or anyone from William Morris. He doesn't treat this as a production problem to be efficiently solved by the machinery that keeps live television moving forward. He walks directly to dressing room 3 and knocks quietly on the door. "Miss Streisand, it's Ed. May I come in?" Silence, then the sound of the lock turning with agonizing slowness. The door opens 6 inches. Through the narrow gap, Ed sees what the audience dressed in their Sunday best downstairs will never imagine. Barbra Streisand, the woman whose voice can fill Carnegie Hall without amplification, whose face graces magazine covers from Life to Vogue, whose talent rewrote the rules about what a star could look like, sitting on the floor in her cream performance gown, mascara streaming down her face in dark rivers, clutching a telephone receiver like a lifeline to somewhere far away. "I can't do this," she whispers, her legendary voice reduced to something broken and small. "Ed, I'm sorry. I can't go out there." Ed glances at his watch. 4.5 minutes. Downstairs, the audience is settling into their seats for the final time, programs folded, ready for the show to begin. The orchestra is positioned in the pit, sheet music on stands, waiting for the downbeat. America is tuning in, adjusting their television sets, calling family members to hurry because Sullivan is about to start. Everything he has built across 17 years depends on the show beginning exactly on time, with exactly the promised stars, maintaining exactly the reputation for reliability that keeps CBS on top and keeps sponsors writing checks. He looks at the woman on the floor, not at a ratings asset or a contract obligation or a $50,000 booking or a show business commodity that needs to be managed, and makes a choice that will define this night forever. He steps inside the dressing room and closes the door behind him, shutting out the machinery of television, the demands of 70 million viewers, and the iron laws of live broadcasting. "Tell me what happened," he says quietly. What emerges slowly through Barbara's broken sentences and gasping breaths is the kind of devastation that doesn't respect show schedules or broadcast contracts or the carefully constructed machinery of live television. 23 minutes ago, at exactly 7:29, a phone call reached her dressing room. It was her stepfather, Louis Kind, calling from their old apartment in Brooklyn, the man who raised her from age 7, who she had complicated feelings about, but who remained family, who she hadn't spoken to in months because of old wounds and show business distances that turn weeks into silence. He wasn't calling to wish her well before the broadcast. He wasn't calling to tell her that her mother would be watching tonight like she always did. Television turned up loud so the neighbors could hear that her daughter was on Ed Sullivan again. He was calling to tell her that her mother, Diana, had collapsed that afternoon, rushed to Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn, suspected stroke. The doctors were running tests, checking vital signs, asking questions that Louis couldn't answer because it all happened so fast. One moment Diana was fine, talking about her daughter's appearance tonight, and the next moment she was on the floor. They didn't know yet. The doctors just didn't know. And in that horrible space between crisis and outcome, between fear and confirmation, Suspended in the worst kind of uncertainty, Lewis said something that broke through every defense Barbra had built across 6 years of show business armor. "She was watching you on television when it happened. She was so proud, Barbra. She was telling the neighbor about you being on Ed Sullivan tonight. She had it written on the calendar." The cruelty of the timing, the impossibility of the choice. Brooklyn is 45 minutes away in Sunday evening traffic. She could leave right now, this instant, abandon the contract, walk away from $50,000, face the lawsuit that would certainly follow, destroy her reputation for reliability in an industry that forgives talent but never forgives unprofessionalism. Or she could go on stage, perform "Look at That Face" with perfect pitch and choreographed charm while her mother fights for consciousness in a hospital bed, possibly watching through tubes and monitors for the daughter who isn't there. Ed listens without interrupting. No platitudes about how the show must go on. No reassurances that her mother will be fine when he has no possible way of knowing. He has lived 68 years, buried friends, watched people he loved disappear, and knows there are moments when professional wisdom is worthless against human reality. "Have they told you anything more?" he asks quietly. Barbra shakes her head, unable to speak, her famous face completely raw and undefended. "They said they'd call if anything changed," Barbra finally manages, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lewis is there. My sister Roslyn is driving in from Long Island." She looks up at Ed, and her eyes carry the kind of terror that no amount of Oscar-winning talent can mask. "I don't know what to do. If I leave, I'll never work in television again. If I stay and something happens while I'm singing..." She can't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. Ed checks his watch again. 2 minutes until air. Downstairs, the floor director is probably panicking, ready to send someone up, ready to implement whatever emergency backup plan exists for moments when stars disappear. The orchestra has started the overture. He can hear it faintly through the dressing room walls, that familiar opening that signals to 70 million Americans that the next hour belongs to Ed Sullivan. The machine demands forward motion. The machine always demands forward motion. But Ed Sullivan, who built his empire on perfect timing and ironclad control, who never missed a broadcast in 17 years, who maintained his composure through every conceivable crisis, does something that will be debated in television production classes for decades. He doesn't try to convince her to perform. He doesn't remind her about contracts or professionalism or the 70 million people waiting. He doesn't tell her that her career depends on this moment, or that CBS has already sold the advertising, or that her reputation for reliability is the only thing that matters in show business. Instead, he asks her a question that cuts through everything. "What would your mother want you to do?" Barbra stares at him, and in that moment of forced clarity, through all the fear and uncertainty and impossible choices, the answer becomes obvious. "She'd want me to sing," Barbra whispers. "She'd be furious if I didn't. She waited my whole life to see me here." Ed nods slowly. Then he does something that no one who knew his legendary emotional restraint would believe if they hadn't witnessed it themselves. He sits down on the floor beside her, 68 years old in his broadcast suit, 1 minute before going live to 70 million Americans, and takes her hand. "Then you'll sing," he says quietly, "and I'm going to make sure America knows what it means." "Ed, you can't tell them about my mother. She wouldn't want that. She's a private person. She'd hate." "I'm not going to tell them about your mother," Ed interrupts gently. "I'm going to tell them about courage." 30 seconds. Somewhere below them, the floor director is having a cardiac event. The orchestra has finished the overture and started it again, buying impossible seconds that feel like theft from the iron laws of live broadcasting. Ed stands, helps Barbra to her feet with a steadiness that seems to transfer strength from his hands to hers. He takes out his handkerchief, perfectly pressed, monogrammed, the kind of detail that defines a man who believes presentation matters. and carefully wipes the mascara from her face with a tenderness that would shock everyone who thinks of him as the stone-faced ringmaster of American entertainment. "You're going to walk out there," he says, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "And you are going to be magnificent, not because the contract says so, not because CBS paid for it, but because your mother is watching, and she deserves to see her daughter shine." Barbra nods, unable to speak, her throat too tight for words. "And when you finish," Ed continues, and now his voice catches in a way it never has in 833 broadcasts, "I promise you, we will get you to Brooklyn, if I have to drive you myself." They walk together down the backstage corridor, through the wings where crew members stare in relief and confusion, their faces asking questions no one dares to voice. Ed takes his position for the opening while Barbra disappears into the darkness backstage, breathing deeply, transforming catastrophe into performance through sheer force of professional will and love for a mother 45 minutes away. The floor director counts down with panic sweat visible on his forehead. 5, 4, 3. The red light blazes on camera 1. Ed Sullivan looks directly into 70 million American living rooms, and instead of his usual brisk introduction, he pauses. Just one beat longer than normal, and something in his face carries a weight that viewers can't quite identify but can absolutely feel. It's in the set of his shoulders, the slight softness around his eyes, the way he seems to be choosing each word with unusual care. "Good evening," he says. "Tonight, we have something very special for you." He introduces the opening acts with his customary professionalism, but those watching closely notice something different in his cadence, a deliberate slowness, a careful spacing of words, as if he's simultaneously hosting a show and protecting something fragile just off stage. Richard Burton performs his Shakespeare. Stiller and Mira deliver their comedy. The ballet dancers move with European grace. Everything proceeds according to schedule, yet nothing feels quite the same.